Kia Sorento X-Pro, built for the unstoppable. Get 0% APR for up to 48 months, plus zero payments for
Prevagen for her brain.
Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. We almost made it above freezing today. Almost. It's hard to believe that it was -5 this morning, and tomorrow it's going up to 50. So, only in Pittsburgh, we'll go up to 50 tomorrow after being at -5. So, hopefully everyone's doing okay. Just want to do a little reminder about next week's test. And then I'll say it again at the end, just in case anybody hopped on late. So next week, the test is the second half of class. So I'll lecture for about 45 minutes, and then I'll give you a little break. And then I will open the test on Blackboard. So when you take the test, you will just download the test. And what you'll do is either highlight your answers. So you have your option of how you want to do it. You can just take the test and highlight the answer and then send me back the test. You can write on a piece of paper your name and then 1A, 2B, 3C, just that way, and like take a picture of it and send me a nice clear picture so I can actually read it. Or you can just type your answers like right in the body of an email. Same thing, you'd put your name and then 1A, 2B, 3C, etc. So when you're done with the test, you just email that back to me. I will send you a got it, because I have to be able to open it. So I usually check right away. Once I will say, hey, I got it, that means you don't have to stay on. So 45 minutes or so of lecture, little break, and then you have as much time as you need all the way to the end of class. More than enough time. I think there's like 32 questions. It's multiple choice. 3 little short answers, but they're easy short answer ones. And it's only on lectures 1, 2, and 3. So that's like tonight's lecture is not on test 1. I lost you for a minute. That was kind of weird, but hopefully it's not going to keep doing that. Everyone hear me now? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So let me back up then again. So, but 32, 31, 32 questions roughly, all multiple choice with the exception of like 3 fill in the blanks, only on lectures 1, 2, and 3. So tonight's lecture is on 4, which is learning. That's for the second test. So we're going to cover learning tonight. And then if we have time, we're going to do a memory activity that I'm going to try to improve your memory. Only because it's easier not to do this memory activity the same day as the test, because it can throw some people off, since I'm going to ask you to memorize some things. So towards the end of class, you will need a piece of paper and a writing utensil to do the activity. Okay? That's about it. So far, everything seems to be going well. Everyone has turned in their stuff that they needed to turn in. I think there was only 1 or 2, and I think I emailed them. So everyone else should be fine. Remember the videos, you're doing those as we go. So you're going to be watching the video on learning. Again, you just do your summary. It goes in your journal. You don't send that to me. That comes in all at the end of the class. I've only had about 4 people pick their topic yet. And you still have time to pick a topic. But, once you know your topic, you want to make sure you can get your topic. So as soon as you know what topic you want to do, all you have to do is send me, an email and let me know which topic you would like to do. I'll give you some hints if it's going to be a hard topic to do, depending on how much is out there. But if you go on Blackboard, there is a list. I have a document there with a list of possibilities. You don't have to do only the things that are on that list. Almost everything can fit into psychology as long as you can find a way to uh, show me that you want to connect it to psychology. Okay, like right now in my AP Psych classes, they're analyzing commercials and how advertisers use psychology to get people to buy products. And it was appropriate time since we just had the Super Bowl and all those wonderful commercials they had on. But even though that's not on the list, that would be a fair game topic. How businesses, how companies use psychology to try to motivate consumers to buy their product. So it doesn't have to be on that list, but I do have all the biggies on the list. So once you know what you want, feel free to, send me an email, let me know, I'll get you on the list, and then it's your topic, and you don't have to worry about, oh, two people already got that topic, I can't do it. So, okay. So tonight, again, we're going to cover learning, and then we're going to do a little memory activity, and then I'll take any questions or anything. It's it's not it's not a really hard test. The other advantage you have, since this is the first test you're going to be taking with me, there's an opportunity for extra credit on this first test, and it only counts for this first test. Whereas you're asked to watch 5 TED Talks if you want 15 percentage points. 4 TED Talks would give you 12 percentage points. So whatever your grade is, so let's say you got an 85 on the first test, you do the 5 TED Talks and a little summary, just like you do the reviews for all the other videos, and you send those to me. I add 15 percentage points to your test. So instead of getting an 85, you would get 100%. If you had a 60, it would bring it from a 60 to a 75. If you only want to do one, you get 3 percentage points added to your test. And you have 2 weeks to do it after the test. So once the test is given, you have 2 weeks to turn in those TED Talks. You have more than enough time to watch these little TED Talks. They're anywhere from 8 minutes to 15 minutes long. They're all famous psychologists who have done the TED Talks, and I'm sure you've experienced a TED Talk before. It's just a one person giving an in-depth kind of reflection per se and lecture to an audience. So hopefully you will choose to do that. It's not required, so you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it, but it would have to
Are the
be
TED Talks in a
turned in to
syllabus?
me by email within the 2 weeks after the test. Okay, so you got more than enough time to get that done. I see we got some, let me pull up the chat here. Okay. The lecture should be under, like if you click on Zoom and then there should be recordings. But if it'll make it easier, I'll actually just post the link. That's fine. Either way. Most of my lectures are already on YouTube from even previous classes, if you'd like to watch those also. But I'll go in after the class and make sure that the link is there. So if you do want to watch the lectures, but it's basically what we did. Okay? The TED Talks are not, it's not TED Talks on the syllabus. There's an actual document that says extra credit for the first test on Blackboard. So if you click that, it will give you your choice of TED Talks. There's like 12 of them. So you pick the ones you want to do. So I'm not forcing you to watch something you don't want to watch, but like there's one from uh, Elizabeth Loftus, who did research on eyewitness testimony, and we'll be talking about her when we, you know, go into these upcoming lectures. Like Philip Zimbardo, the guy who is on every one of those learner.org videos, his research on um, like can normally good, ordinary people do something that is wrong? I mean, they're all people that are connected to our class in some way, but you pick whatever topic, you know, which five you would want to do. And again, you can choose to do two, you can choose to do one, you can choose to do none if you don't want to. But it's a nice, easy kind of a curve to the grade. Since none of you have had me before, most people, if you're going to do poorly on a test, it's usually the first test because you just don't know how I test. You've never seen one of my tests. So this way you at least get to have an opportunity to improve that. The last thing I want to say before we get started is that you will have to be on camera. In other words, I have to see you taking the test. So if for some reason, like a lot of you don't have your camera on right now, you would not be permitted to take the test. So you have to be on camera. You have a week to find someone who has an active camera on their computer. You can always borrow one from one of the campuses if you need to, just to take the test. You could always use your phone as your camera and have it set up so I can see you taking the test and still take it on your computer. It's not open notes. It's not open internet. You can't receive help from anyone else. So it's just like you would if you were taking it in class, except you're doing it on camera. Okay? Any questions on that? I'll say that all again at the end of the class, just in case anybody picks up, you know. What was the assignment for the last week? Well, again, we didn't have anything that had to be turned in. You should have had your introduction, you should have had your past, present promise, and you should have already done your vocabulary. You should have watched the video on biology. You should have watched the video on sensation and perception. And you should be watching after this class the video on learning. But none of those videos are due until the end of the class. So if you got a lot of stuff going on this week and you just want to spend time studying for the test, then wait till next week to do the videos because they're not due yet. So there's nothing to turn in this week. Okay. Any other questions? Again, for the extra credit, you're going to go on Blackboard, look for the thing that says extra credit for test 1, read the directions, pick up to 5 TED Talks. You can't do any more than 5. So up to 5 TED Talks, you're going to summarize what you learned. So you're going to just watch the TED Talk, give me a summary just like you do for the other videos. 1 to 2 paragraphs, at least 5 sentences, you know, tells me that you actually watched the video. And then you just send those to me, and then I'll acknowledge it, and then I add 15 percentage points to your test. But you have plenty of time. You can choose to, you know, wait till you get your test score back. And usually I get your scores back within the week. So As I grade them during the week, I actually email you back, oh, you got this grade on the test. So you might want to wait until you see what your grade is on the test if you want to do it or not. But it's a win-win. I mean, even if you got 100% on the test, I'm giving you 15 percentage points if you do the TED Talks. So that means it would go in the grade book as 115. And I'll always email you your grades. So keep track of your grades because by the end of the course, you'll have all your grades there. You can just average your grade, divided by 6 because we got 6 components. And it's pretty straightforward. Okay? Okay. Let's. So far, it seems like the connection's much more stable now. So good. And remember, once I go to this full screen, I won't be able to see your chat. So I will pop back and forth. You can always just, ask the question. Feel free to stop me. Or if for some reason I lose you, just stay on. I'll just reconnect. But it did that last time, one time too. So, but I got on it real quick. That one took me a second to get back on. So the topic for today is learning. And as a school teacher, one of my favorite topics. So, definition of learning, a relatively permanent change in behavior that results from experience. So, let's think about that. Again, you don't have to memorize that word for word, but, you know, understand what that means. So, anything we do that could possibly change what we do because of something we experienced. So, basically, every single thing we do is learning, and we will continue to learn until the day we die. There's no end. It's like there's no graduation. Okay, you got your college, diploma, so now you don't have to learn anything anymore. No, we're constantly learning. We can learn from books, we can learn from the internet, we can learn from each other, we can learn from our environment. So we're constantly learning. But if it changes us in any way, then it fits the definition of learning. Habituation is learning that occurs when we've been exposed to some stimulus multiple times. That decreases our response to that stimulus. So, as an example, let's say you're driving home, and typically when you get to this intersection that has a red light, to go home, you have to turn right. But that day, you're like, wow, you know what? I should go to the store first, which would mean you wouldn't turn right. You would just go straight. But you get to that intersection and you automatically turn right. And you're like, why did I do that? I wanted to go to the store. That's habituation. You've done that move so many times that you don't even pay attention to it anymore. Anybody who bites their nails. Sometimes you haven't even paid attention that you were biting your nails until you're like, ow, and you realize that you were biting your nails. So habituation is anything that, because we've been exposed to the same situation, the same stimulus, we kind of automatically do it. We ignore that stimulus as something new because we're so used to doing it. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and cognitive and social learning. Now, what's interesting about this lecture tonight, most of the lecture is going to be on the first two, classical conditioning and operant conditioning. The last one on social learning theory is only one slide because it fits under learning. But we will spend an entire night doing social learning theory when we do social psychology, and that's not till like the third test. So I don't want to beat a horse here. You know, we just need to know where it fits in the category of learning, but we're going to really flesh out this information on social learning theory and how we learn from our environment. But typically, we put it in this category because it is learning, but we're going to spend most of the lecture tonight on classical conditioning and operant conditioning. And these things aren't anything new because I've talked about them back on the first night in the first lecture. So, an example, the sound of a dentist drill. Some people are afraid of going to the dentist. And even if they have to go, they're sitting out in the waiting room and they can hear that zzz, zzz on somebody else's teeth being worked on, and it can cause anxiety. And you're not even in with the dentist yet. Or if you're walking down the hall at the college and somebody smiles at you, typically you smile back. Let's do it in reverse. Let's say you smiled at someone, and let's say they didn't smile back. You'd be like, well, that was rude. They could at least smiled back, right? Because we're expecting it, because we've been conditioned to do that. Some people have had certain strong emotions connected to food or beverage. So this is where I'm going to ask you to turn on your cameras, please. So I'm going to ask you for some of you to share if you've had anything that you no longer eat or drink because you had some sort of bad experience with it. I'll start to give an example. When I first started teaching, I would teach all day, and then I was also the cheerleading moderator, so I had to always go to all the basketball games with my cheerleaders. So sometimes I wouldn't get home until like 10 o'clock at night and wouldn't have eaten all day. And the one time, my first year teaching, I came home and I just went to the freezer and I bought this little cheapy chicken pot pie. And I threw it in the oven, was getting changed and everything, and I wasn't feeling real great. And I thought, oh, it's just because I didn't eat. And I wolfed down that chicken pot pie. Well, about 45 minutes later, I spend the rest of the night paying homage to the porcelain god. I was sick as a dog. I just couldn't stop throwing up. Turns out that I was getting the flu that ended up becoming pneumonia. I never wanted to see a pot pie again. And that was like when I was 22. It wasn't until I was 55 till I forced myself to eat a chicken pot pie. Just because I knew what I did, it was a psychological thing. It was almost like a phobia. I was afraid to eat a chicken pot pie because I was afraid I was going to get sick. So, give an example. Anybody want to share something that you can no longer eat or drink or do because you had a bad reaction to it? Need to get a couple more cameras on, please.
This is Star. I know it's a little dark. I'm walking from my car to my
I can't
house.
believe none of you have ever had an experience where
Yeah,
you avoid eating or drinking something.
this is
I
Star. Can
usually
you
get
hear
at
me?
least a couple. Just say it out loud.
Can you hear us talking?
I don't, can you guys hear me talking?
We
Yeah, I
hear
can hear
you, but
you.
I don't
Yeah,
think
we
she
can
Yeah.
hear
hears
you. I don't think
us.
So we
she's
have for
there.
it's a coffee beverage. Okay.
Can you hear us?
Professor, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
I think your
Um,
speakers might be turned off or muted.
Yeah, I don't know if
I
she can hear us.
I
She
I
can.
just
We can hear you.
heard you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is Star.
I
My
my experience will be with bologna. The lunch meat bologna.
Okay, what happened when you ate bologna?
When I was younger, we went to Kennywood like on sort of a family picnic. And my mom, we were low on funds, so she packed a picnic for us. She packed sandwiches and things like that. And there were a lot of bologna sandwiches. So I, as a kid running around Kennywood, went and ate the bologna sandwiches and then went and got on rides. And I was so sick. Like I threw up all day, all the next day. And then I was fine. So, my mom's like, you should have let your food settle before you ate and got right on the roller coaster. But in my mind, I equated it being the bologna as to why I was sick. So even to this day, it kind of plays on my psyche. And I just can't eat it. I can't eat it. I can't smell it, anything.
Did it affect you going on that ride also ever again?
As weird as it is, no.
Okay.
Because in my mind, it's the bologna. Now, of course, now that I'm older, I realize that it maybe it wasn't wise to eat bologna on a 90 something degree summer day and be running around the park. But then again, I know that it was the roller coaster. Like I know that's what made me sick, but in my mind,
It's the
I
bologna.
just cannot eat the bologna because of that.
Yep. Good. Someone else.
I could go.
Okay.
You know the nuts that they do at like malls or at like fairs, the like cinnamon sugar
Oh,
nuts.
yeah.
Yeah, I can't even smell that smell anymore because I ate too many of them. So yeah, that's mine. But the bologna one's better.
They're all very unique to each individual person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone else.
I'll go. When I was younger, I used to think that if you would throw up off of something that you were allergic to it. So I had to be like maybe around like 5 or 6, and I was with my cousins, and we had ate like a whole bunch of hot Cheetos, and we all ended up throwing up afterwards, and we're just going around like we're allergic, we can't eat them
Uh,
no more.
that would
But
do
after
it.
a while, like we really definitely did stop eating them. But as we got older, like we realized, like yeah, like we just consumed too much of them. So
Yeah, I usually get someone who has a good drinking story. Anybody have a good drinking story? Something you can't drink anymore?
Mine is Fireball.
Okay.
It made me eat a hot dog out of a garbage can on the boardwalk. So I don't drink Fireball anymore.
Yeah, that would do it.
I didn't know that I ate a hot dog out of a garbage can, but I did apparently. There's a picture somewhere.
Oh,
I don't know who has it, but
Was it your hot dog? Like, did you throw it
no,
out?
I
No,
was
it was
just hungry. I just wanted a hot dog and I saw it in the garbage can and I ate it.
yeah, that would do it.
I also shared a cigar with a random 70-year-old man who told me I was going to go to hell. You know those people on the boardwalk that are like, "Are you going to heaven or hell?"
Yeah,
Yeah, that's New Jersey for you.
you got a couple good ones there. Anybody else
Yeah,
want to share? No one else? So, think about that. That's a pairing. That occurred. You didn't plan it. That that can lead to phobias, and we're going to talk about different types of phobias. Um, but people have had these pairings sometimes they don't remember where it happened, but now all of a sudden they avoid something, or that's learning. You learned something, except you don't know how you learned it or why it bothered you. If you know where it happened, you can desensitize yourself. That means you can actually kind of reverse that. Like I said, it took me a long time. Finally, I'm like, I am going to Cheesecake Factory because I know they make their own, chicken pot pies. And I ate that chicken pot pie and it was really good, but I haven't had a chicken pot pie since then. But I know I can do it. So even psychologists who know what we're doing, sometimes we still avoid it. It's like, if I was starving, I would eat a chicken pot pie. It just happened to pair with me when I was getting sick with the flu. So it was really the flu that was causing me to have that upset stomach and to throw up. But thank you everyone for sharing. So let me go back on this slide. Maybe some of you have pets too. Your dog or your cat could be somewhere else in the house, but as soon as you start to open their food, they're like right there, like Fluffy's there. Like where the heck did you come from? Because they've been conditioned to the sound of you opening their food. So how does that happen? Well, it's going to be classical conditioning. And we kind of mentioned Pavlov that first night. Ivan Pavlov. And when you watch the video on learning, the one that's on learner.org, you are going to see the original footage from 1905 of Pavlov and his dogs. So what we're talking about right now, you're going to actually see the real footage. It's amazing even that they had video back in 1905. But you're going to see classical conditioning take place right in that video. So Ivan Pavlov, he did it by accident. He didn't plan out doing this. He was working on nutrition and digestion. And he actually won the Nobel Prize for nutrition. But he founded classical conditioning, not knowing that he actually did it until after it occurred. So when we talk about classical conditioning, there are 4 components, and we're going to go through each of them. The unconditioned stimulus, the unconditioned response, the conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response. So we always use the abbreviations, so you don't have to write that out, but they're standard abbreviations that you would see in any textbook, for those particular things. So what Pavlov did, he was working with dogs because he wanted to, measure, how dogs' digestion works and, different types of food. So he wanted to see how much saliva is produced prior to the dog actually putting the food in their mouth. So what would happen is that he would, harness the dog, and he connected a little tube that went to this little graduated cylinder so he could measure the amount of saliva. So when the dog sees food, the dog automatically salivates. You didn't have to learn that. Like if we were all in the same room and I brought in a pizza, even if you don't like pizza, the amount of saliva produced by your mouth would increase just by the smell or looking at the pizza. So he wanted to see how much saliva is produced when a dog is exposed to food. So the unconditioned stimulus is the food. You didn't have to teach a dog food because they need food to survive. And you didn't have to teach the dog to produce saliva because that's unconditioned. It just happens. So the unconditioned stimulus would be the food, the unconditioned response would be the saliva. That just happens. So what he found out, which was kind of odd after doing this over and over, after a while, the dog didn't even have to see food. If they just saw Pavlov, they started to salivate. No, Pavlov didn't have any food on him. So, I mean, Pavlov isn't unconditioned. You know, that's not something everyone, when they see Pavlov, they just start to salivate. That only works for food. So, what was going on? So, this is when he started to do some experimenting. So, as you can see in the little chart there, the unconditioned stimulus is the food. That's just something that we know. Nobody had to teach us that. And the response is saliva. That just happens. So that's natural. What he did was pair something that normally would not cause the dog to salivate. And we say that's a neutral stimulus, something that doesn't cause that reaction. In this case, a tuning fork he used. So, if you rang a tuning fork, the dog isn't going to start to salivate. But if we continue to pair that tuning fork and the sound that it makes with the food. So if you go ding, food, dog salivates. Ding, food, dog salivates. The dog eventually will learn that the tone that the tuning fork presents means food's coming. Now, it's not typically just a one-time occurrence. It can be, but typically it's repeated over and over again. And we call that acquisition, acquiring a new learning pair. So acquisition is the term that you would want to be familiar with. So eventually, if you keep doing this ding, food, dog salivates, and eventually you don't need the food. The dog learns that that sound means food's coming. That dog learned something new. It acquired a new pairing. This is how phobias form. This is how our things that we talked about, those pairings, formed. We didn't plan it that way. It just was connected to something. And the stronger the emotional response, the longer that pairing's going to last. And there's a possibility that it can generalize to things that are similar. So you had mentioned like Fireball. It's a possibility that other things that kind of taste like Fireball, like cinnamon schnapps, or, you could also generalize your avoidance to those things because they're similar to the one you already avoid. That's avoidance learning. We can generalize to other particular, things that are in the environment. But the stronger it is, the greater the chance you're going to develop a phobia. And phobias are a wonderful paper topic. There are literally hundreds of different types of phobias. You probably wouldn't have enough to do just one phobia if you were doing your 5-page paper. You would probably have to get 2 or 3 to discuss and analyze and talk about how they can get rid of it and etc. But you might remember from the first night we talked about little Albert. And this is John Watson's experiment. He wanted to see if he could condition a little toddler, whose name was Little Albert, to fear something that he was not afraid of. See, babies aren't born being afraid of things. That's learned, just like we're not born racist, sexist, or ageist. Those are all learned responses. You know, little toddlers, they'll play with everyone. They don't care if you're big, you're small, black, white, green, yellow, orange, purple. You know, they'll play with anyone because they have no fear of anyone until some pairing may come along the way, whether it's something they learned, from TV, from the environment, from, the internet, or being with some people may also could cause this type of pairing to occur. So what he did was present little Albert with this, and let me hop off here, with this white rat. So he would show little Albert this white rat, and you're going to see this video also on the learner.org thing that goes with learning. So you're going to see little Albert, and you're going to see him show the rat, and little Albert basically does this. I mean, there's no response because little Albert's not afraid of rats. You have an opinion about rats. If I came up to you and I had a rat on my shoulder, some of you, hey, that's so cool. And other people may go running across the room because you don't like rats. Because somewhere you learned information about a rat. But little Albert had no information. So he wanted to see if he could teach little Albert to be afraid of the rat. Now, little kids are very, very much startled if they hear a very loud noise that they're not expecting. So what Watson did was put a gong, you know, a gong right behind little Albert. And his assistant, Ronnie Rayner, right as he was presenting the rat to little Albert, she hit the gong. Now, that loud noise causes a startle. So, little Albert, okay. Now, you would say, okay, does that happen again the next time you show the rat if we don't hit the gong? Well, no, probably not after one time. But if you repeatedly show the rat and then hit the gong and little Albert goes, we've now conditioned little Albert, he's acquired a new learning that rats are connected with that loud noise, and he gets startled and cries to the point that little Albert no longer needs to hear the gong. Just showing the rat to little Albert will cause little Albert to go. Conditioning has taken place. So the rat now is the conditioned stimulus, the learned thing. And the conditioned response is the crying. Now, if that pairing and that emotional response was really strong, it could generalize. That means little Albert could become afraid of other things that had white fur. And he did. He became afraid of bunnies with white fur, dogs that had a white fur coat, an actual white fur coat, someone who had like a mask that had some white and like a little white beard, and even Santa Claus because of the white hair. The problem with Watson's research was he never desensitized little Albert or any of the other children that he used in his experiment. There's nothing in the research saying that he desensitized them. That means little Albert may have gone through the whole rest of his life being fearful of things that had white fur or people who had white hair. So that's bad science. You never leave a person worse off than they were before you started the experiment. So we call that generalization. Okay. Discrimination can also take place where children or adults can learn it's only one thing. So I'm going to keep using the Fireball alcohol here. So it may only be Fireball that causes that avoidance, not, cinnamon schnapps that taste very much like Fireball, but it doesn't have that connection. So it's discriminative to that one alcohol. So we have that generalization, which could be more things that are alike, or discrimination, things that are specific. An example, if you have a dog and every time, you pull your car into the driveway, your dog runs to the window. Okay? And he only runs to the window when he hears your car. That's discrimination. It's just one thing. If they have generalized the stimulus, they would run to the window every time they heard a car come by your driveway. Not only you, but everybody's car. Okay. Let's go back here. Now, it's a lot easier to develop a phobia or a pairing to something that may be more biological, like snakes or spiders, lizards, um, anything that you may have somewhere learned along the way in biology class that it could hurt you. That's a lot easier than developing a car door phobia. So this is a real story. So one of my students I didn't tell you the story of the girl and the 21st birthday, right? I didn't tell you that the first night. So this girl was the designated driver for her friend who was turning 21, and they were going to the south side and they were going to hit all the bars, and do the stuff you do for 21, but they needed a designated driver. So she said that she would be the designated driver, and she drank like Pepsi or Coke all night, and her three friends that were with her, they were drinking and having a good time and everything. And when they left the bar to go back to the car, she ended up having an unexpected pairing that was really, really, really disgusting. But she went to put her hand on the car door handle, and she had that type of car where you have to put your hand underneath the door handle to open it. Well, some wise ass decided to put fresh dog shit under the car handle. So when she put her hands to open the door, the shit literally went all over her hands, under her nails, and her friends are laughing hysterically, and she's like, oh, 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 and she's like trying to rub it off onto the ground. There's not a lot of grass in the south side, so she's like trying to rub it off on the cement. She didn't have any Kleenexes or everything, you know. The friends, let's just get in the car. You can wash them when you go home. But then you got the smell in the car. Everyone was getting sick from the smell. She developed the car door phobia. She told us it wasn't only her car, but she no longer can open a car door without having something else on her hand, like a glove or a paper towel or a baggie or something. She got that generalization to all car doors. I mean, imagine how emotional that would have been that night. And we said the stronger the emotion, the greater the chance that phobia is going to stick. So that had happened, she said, like 3 years before, and she still would not open a car door without having something on her hand. That's a very strong phobia. Now, I told her how she can desensitize herself to that, but she said she'd rather not take the chance and just continue to use gloves or paper towels or something to open any car door that she goes in. So you can develop a phobia to anything. Cotton balls, sandpaper, certain types of rugs. I mean, literally anything can give you that pairing. And once it's paired, that stronger the connection, the stronger that emotional response, classical conditioning takes place. I know, pretty disgusting, but a true story. Can't make this stuff up. So now, if you look at the chart, because the chart's really important, so pay attention to this chart. Hint, hint. So when we have acquisition, that means the person's going to respond, okay, or the animal. So let's go back to Pavlov. So Pavlov comes in and no longer needs food. The dog just salivates. Well, after a while, if Pavlov doesn't have any food, eventually that behavior, the saliva, is going to extinguish itself. In other words, it's going to stop salivating when it sees Pavlov. Now notice here, there's this little rest period. Rest period is important because it could be days, weeks, months, years. But if somewhere along the line, just one time, when they see Pavlov, Pavlov has food for them and they are producing saliva, we call that spontaneous recovery. It's back and it's harder to get rid of after you had it go away because it came back. It comes back even stronger. Okay? So we had acquisition. The elimination of it is extinction. This all important rest period, and it's just different. You can't say it's after 2 weeks. It's different for everyone. And then it comes back. So, example. Let's say it's Halloween and your child went out trick-or-treating and they got a really big bunch of candy. And you had this deal with your child that if you go to Target or Walmart or even the supermarket, if they're really good, when they get to the checkout, they can pick out one piece of candy. Okay? So that's already set up. The child knows that. So the child is really good. They get to the checkout and they're like, Mom, Dad, I'd like that candy bar. And mom or dad or both say, well, honey, you have an entire bag of candy at home. You even have that exact same candy at home. Why would we buy it now? You can have that when you go home. And the child starts to get upset, like, but, but I was good. Yes, you were. You were very good. But we're not going to buy you more candy. You have an entire big bag of candy at home, including that kind of candy. But, but you promised me that I could have candy if I'm good. Yeah, and you were good. We'll even let you have two pieces when you get home. But we're not going to spend money on a candy bar that you have sitting at home. But you promised me. And the next thing you know, your kid is on the floor, screaming, kicking, having a hissy fit. You know? And watch this happen. Shh, here. Acquisition just took place. That child learned if they get hysterical, if they get moody, if they, get on the floor and kick and scream, they're going to get what they want. It's hard to be a parent. Very hard to be a parent. That's acquisition. Now, if it never happens again, or the next time they do that, they don't give them, here, be quiet, just here's a candy bar. That behavior will extinguish. It will go away. But if just one time, it could be weeks later, months later, a year later, just one time they throw that fit. Oh, here it is. And you give them the candy. Guess what's back? Spontaneous recovery. So parents have such a hard job. They have to really, have a knowledge of what they do and they say. And sometimes it just happens. But you can extinguish that behavior if you never reinforce it again, if you never have that pairing there. So we talked about stimulus generalization. We talked about stimulus discrimination. If you've ever known anyone who maybe was trying to go through rehab, whether it's drugs or alcohol or, they're just trying to quit cigarettes or whatever they may be trying to break that pairing that they have that they naturally do. Like a lot of people naturally, if they go out in public, when they have a drink, they may light up a cigarette. Or like in my case, my boyfriend smokes at the casino, but nowhere else. Just at the casino, and only if he gets a bonus. That's it. Only if he gets a bonus and at the casino. He could go a year without a cigarette. But if he would go in the casino and he gets a bonus, he lights up a cigarette. That, it's the environment. So sometimes we're conditioned with the environment. So people who are doing rehab are told not to go back to doing what you used to do. Like, don't hang out with those friends that are smoking, everyone around you, while you're trying to quit smoking, because it makes it extra hard. And many people fail because they go back to that environment. Or the same thing with drinking. Until you kind of get yourself settled, don't go hanging out in bars. Even, oh, I'm just going to have one. Well, no, one can lead to two, which can lead to many more. And the next thing you know, you're back in rehab again. So environmental cues can cause something to occur because it's been conditioned to the environment. How do we get rid of it? We desensitize a person. So let's say if a person was afraid of flying, the first thing I would do is I would show them a little small toy plane. Because some people, it is generalized to anything that kind of looks like a plane. make sure they don't have any anxiety just looking at that little plane. And if they do, you take it very slow. You keep showing them the plane to the point that they no longer show anxiety. Then maybe you show them a bigger picture of a plane, or you show them a movie with a plane in it. And please, if you're going to do this to someone, don't show them Airplane, Airport, or Miracle on the Hudson because there's problems with the plane. So it's not going to get rid of their phobia, it's just going to ignite it even more. So once they don't have any anxiety watching a film that has an airplane in it, they go to the airport with their therapist, and the therapist can get permission to take you to look at the planes, and you watch the planes take off. And you continue to do that until they don't have any anxiety about it. Then they get permission to take you on board a plane that's not going anywhere, just to sit in the seat on a plane. And you do that repeatedly over a number of days or weeks. So they're not anxious. And then finally, you actually go on a plane ride somewhere. And typically, uh, they suggest that you take some sort of, anti-anxiety med when you do that the first time, because you don't want the person freaking out while they're up in the air. But that would kind of calm them down a little bit. And once they've done it one time, there's a good chance they may actually kind of be cured of that particular phobia. That's a way to desensitize someone. In advertising, hop off here. So in advertising, there was an ad way, way back in the 70s, I know, before you were born, that got tons of response for people. And it was for a whiskey, and I won't say the whiskey, but it was for a whiskey. And it was like a winter setting where there was a nice fireplace, and it looked really warm and cozy. And on this table, they had this bottle of whiskey, and they had two glasses, and in the glasses there were some ice cubes and whiskey in them. And people just started buying this whiskey after this ad ran in magazines. I mean, a lot of people, like their sales went up, 50, 60% after this ad. Well, what they found out was if you looked at the glass of whiskey, most people wouldn't notice, but your brain would notice. Shaded in the ice cubes was the word sex, S-E-X. So even though the person seeing the ad didn't really acknowledge that because they didn't actually see it per se by being cognitively aware of it, but your brain saw it. And your brain connected sex with that whiskey, was conditioning you to buy that whiskey. And people went out and bought the
Skip in.
No, it's me too. I was wondering the same thing.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, she was skipping.
Yeah, it could have possibly be Zoom too. Every now and then we do have issues with Zoom, but typically I haven't been having any trouble when today's been one of those days. So, but thank you for bearing with me. So that's classical conditioning. So that's almost one half of what we're talking about tonight. Okay, let's get back to this. So now we're on the other type of learning. So this is operant conditioning. And operant conditioning are pairings also, except they're done either what we call reinforcement or with punishment. So let's say I make this statement. Tantrums are punished, so there would be fewer tantrums. Not necessarily, because if tantrums bring attention and the person is trying to get attention, they might participate in more tantrums. So if you ever get the chance to go to a casino, I love people watching at the casino. If a slot machine pays out, people tend to gamble more. And gambling addiction's another really good paper topic. Because of this pairing, people do a whole bunch of different things, a whole bunch of crazy things. So an example, there's this one older woman at the Rivers Casino that she puts her 7 grandchildren's pictures up on the machine, every machine she goes to. And she touches each picture and then pushes the button. And I was sitting next to her the one day, and being the ass that I am, I turned to her and I said, let me guess, you hit big once when you did that. And she said, yeah, I hit for $200. And I said, have you ever hit again for that much money by touching those pictures? And she's like, no, but it could happen at any time. It's a random generator. It's when you hit the button. It has nothing to do with you touching the pictures or people rubbing the screens. You'll get people that will close their eyes during bonuses. I've had people turn around, watch them turn around, like, I can't watch my bonus, it will bring it bad luck. No. As soon as you hit the button, it already knows how much money it's giving you. But they had that pairing. They were reinforced. They were rewarded with money. And I said to her, have you really hit anything big since doing that? And she's like, no. I said, it's really not the pictures. Well, it might be. Like, well, if it's never happened again, and if that's all it took, every single person down here would have 7 pictures on their machine, and they'd all be touching it. But she wasn't going for it, but I gave it a shot. As a psychologist, I'm like, okay, I got to try to help this woman, to understand it's not the pictures. But still to this day, every now and then I'll see her there, and she's still touching her 7 grandkids' pictures. So I don't know if she tells her grandkids that she's, gambling with them, at the casino, but she got reinforced. She got a positive reinforcement. She made a lot of money. And the research is kind of interesting in that for gambling addiction, it's if you win more than $200 the first time you go to a casino, the odds of you going back and going back multiple times are really, really high versus if you lost the first time. The only thing that would change that is if you're going to the casino not to necessarily win money, but maybe your best friend is going and you want to spend time with your best friend. Or they're having some sort of giveaway or something, and you think, oh, if I go to the casino, I might win this giveaway. Casinos use this too. Even the online casinos use basic psychology to get people to spend money in their casino. And they wouldn't be in business if it didn't work. It works. So when we talk about reinforcement, you want to write down this definition. I'll give you a second. Or type it, somewhere. Reinforcement always increases the likelihood of the behavior you want to see. Reinforcement always increases the likelihood of the behavior you want to see. Punishment may or may not. So punishment doesn't always work. Reinforcement gives you the best chance to get it to work. It always increases the likelihood. Doesn't guarantee it, but it increases the likelihood of the behavior that you would like to see. Punishment may or may not. So, if you're teaching a dog how to sit, if you just say the word and you're not giving them any kind of treat to go with it, chances are they're not going to sit. But if you say sit and you show them that treat and you hold it up just a little bit above their head, their butt goes down and they get the reward. You can teach a dog to sit in one time working with them. So reinforcement always increases the likelihood of the behavior. So let's look at some of the research that has been done on this type of conditioning. This is called instrumental conditioning, and the researcher's name was Thorndike. And this is Thorndike's puzzle box. And you might remember the first night of class, I said there are very few laws in psychology. Most of them are theories. Here's one of the laws. It's called the law of effect. And I like to call it the ABCs of the law of effect because that's the first letter of each of the three components. Antecedent, behavior, consequences. So let's look at Thorndike's puzzle box there. And we have a cat inside this box. And there's this little lever connected to a wire that's connected to a pulley that's connected to the door. So if by some manner the cat would hit the lever, may notice, hey, there's something special about this. If I push on this, that door goes up. Hey, I can get that fish, that treat outside the box. So let's look at that law of effect. Antecedent is what's the situation at the very beginning. And it's exactly what I just said. We have a box, there's a cat, there's a lever, and there's a fish that the cat can get if they can get out. The behavior. In this case, in order to get the door up, the cat has to push the lever. Now, cats don't just go around pushing levers, but if they happen to bump it and notice that the door moves, they can learn, there it is, there's our topic, learning, that there's something special about that lever. And if they learn, hey, if I push this lever, what are the consequences? The door goes up and I get the reward. That's instrumental conditioning. The law of effect, the ABCs of the law of effect. Antecedent, behavior, consequences. B.F. Skinner built on, Thorndike's theory, and he called his theory operant conditioning, and he used a Skinner box. So that's a Skinner box. Notice, so you have a rat in here that's hungry. I mean, you don't starve them, but if you normally feed them at 8, do the experiment at 7. So they'll be hungry. Once you feed them, they may not want to work for food. You want them to want to do it. So you have a rat that's hungry, and there's these food pellets here that will come down this little tube and go into this little tray. If the rat pushes down the lever. Well, rats don't go around pushing levers. I mean, they have to learn that. So you would reward physically, you as the experimenter would drop the food pellet anytime this rat got anywhere near the bar. And then the rat would go get the food and eventually would learn, hey, there's something special about this bar. And then you would only drop the food if the rat actually touched the bar. And then you would only let the rat push the bar. And if the rat pushes the bar, it gets the food. And it will run back and forth once it learns that pairing. Hey, if I push the bar, I get food. So it'd go push, food, push, food, push, food. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until there isn't any more food. That pairing. So when we talk about that stimulus and response, that reinforcement that occurs, let me give another example. We're going to take our break in a second, so hang in there. When I took Rat Lab at Pitt, that's what we used to call, it was like Psych 45. Our final exam was to train a rat to do something that rats normally do. I taught my rat to dance for my final. My rat had to stand up on its hind legs, turn around, kick each of its back legs out one at a time, and then push the bar to get the reward. I got an A. Other people, you had your choice of working with rat or chicken. I chose to do the rat because I thought it was easier. You can condition anybody to do anything. You can. If you know somebody, in your household who doesn't want to put the toilet seat down, or they don't want to put the toilet seat up, you can condition them to do this. After tonight's class, you can condition people to do things if you find the right reinforcement for them. But it also means they could condition you. That's how powerful this can be. People will do things for certain rewards. And it can be children, it can be animals, it can be other people, it could be your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, parents. Think of all the times you knew which parent to go to if you wanted to get something. You kind of had them conditioned to say yes because you've kind of worked on them and gave them some sort of reward in some way. So we can condition people to do a lot of different things. And yes, we have free will. I mean, it's not like, you're going to make somebody run naked somewhere, but conditioning. So we are going to stop here for a break. Let me get off the thing here. So I have 7:19. We're going to start back in about 6 or 7 minutes. So it gives you enough time to run, go to the bathroom, grab something to drink, and just relax a little bit. And then we'll come back and finish this lecture. And then I'm going to improve your memory for the night. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Take notes. Both of those are reinforcement. It increases the likelihood of the behavior that I want to see, which is you taking notes. Now, I know your notes are just perfectly fine, Jasmine. So thank you for being so kind to be my negative reinforcement person. When I do this in an actual classroom, I literally get in somebody's face and people are like, oh my gosh, But this is easier when it's on Zoom because I'm not actually in your face. But both gave me the result I wanted, which is you taking notes. So that's why we say it's reinforcement. Punishment, on the other hand, we said may or may not work. And let me pop back to this slide. There are positive and negative punishment, but for intro to psych, you just have to know the term punishment. You don't have to know the two different types. When we talk about punishment, that means something is being done to you that's negative. In order to get punishment to be most effective, it has to be swift, it has to be consistent, and appropriately adversive. Hint, hint, you want to remember those three terms: swift, consistent, and appropriately adversive. So let me give you some examples. So let's say you want to go to the dance and you asked your parents, and they're like, honey, normally it would be fine. We could drive you to the dance, but we're having some friends over tonight and we just can't go. So we promise next time you can go to the dance, but you want to go to the dance tonight. So, when your parents have friends over, they're like downstairs in the basement and in the game room, and they don't come upstairs until around 11 o'clock to check that you're in bed. Now, the dance is at 8. You figure if you sneak out, and you can sneak out your window, go to the dance, and as long as you're back in bed before they come up at 11 o'clock, you'll be good. So that's what you do. You sneak out, you go to the dance, you make sure you leave the dance in enough time. You are back in your room by, say, 10:30. You give yourself some leeway just in case they decide to come up early. And they come up at 11 and you're in bed, and they're like, "Oh, I feel bad that we couldn't take her to the dance, but next time we'll make sure she gets to go to the dance." And you got away with it. And a couple months go by, and your parent runs into one of the teachers and said, "Oh, that outfit your daughter had on at the dance, oh, she looked like she was having such a good time." And you're like, "Wait a minute, she didn't go to the dance." "Oh, yes, she did. I saw her. I was chaperoning. I saw her at the dance." Now, they come home and they find you. Now, this happened 6 months earlier. Do you think that punishment they give you is going to be very effective? No, it wasn't swift. It wasn't close to the time that you did it. So therefore, the chances of punishment are not going to work. Okay? If you would have climbed back in the window and your parents were sitting there on your bed waiting for you, oh yeah, then punishment might work. You're grounded. Yes, because it was swift. So consistent was the second word. That you consistently follow what you say. This is where it can get really hard for parents, especially if you have one parent who may say yes and another parent that says no. Because you know which parent's going to say yes or no. So, of course, you're going to go to the one that is going to say yes, right? So, if they don't consistently punish you for doing something, punishment's not going to work. If sometimes they punish you, sometimes they don't, it doesn't work. And then appropriately adversive. Aversive means negative. So let's say you were talking back to your parents and you didn't want to do your chores. And your parent says to you, "You're grounded for life." First, how do you ground somebody for life? What are you going to do? Follow them into the nursing home? No, it's not appropriate. You can't possibly follow through on that punishment. And if you did give that punishment, and I did hear a parent say that one time, and I said to the parent, you can do whatever you want to do, but once they're grounded for life, well, they could do whatever they want, because what worse could happen? Because they're already grounded for life. They can do anything they want, because you can't punish them any worse than grounding them for life. It has to be appropriate for what they did. So what would be appropriate for, say, a teenager would be, you just lost your phone for a month. Oh, that would do it. That would definitely do it for a teenager to lose their phone. Will it work? Will it stop the behavior? Not necessarily. But if you pair it with reinforcement and say, you know what? If you go the entire week doing your chores and not talking back, we'll let you use your phone for 3 hours on Saturday and 3 hours on Sunday. Doesn't seem like a lot, but before you weren't having it at all, so it's something. And if you go the second week without not doing your chores and not talking back, we'll allow you to use your phone all weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. And if by the third week of our punishment, you've done all your chores and you haven't talked back, we'll give you your phone back, full privileges. So now you've just shaved a whole week off of your punishment. Do you think it will work now? Yeah, there's a greater chance because we paired punishment with reinforcement. Punishment by itself doesn't always work. But if you pair it with reinforcement, you increase the likelihood of the behavior you want to see. Punishment also has some challenges. It can actually increase aggressive behavior. So it's like, you hit your little brother. Come over here. Let me get the belt. Oh, so Dad, Mom, it's okay for you to hit me, but it wasn't okay for me to hit my little brother. See, it sends kind of that mixed message. So they don't really get it. Kids can develop a fear for the person who's doing the punishment. And I'm going to tell you a truth that I've learned over the many, many years of teaching. You don't want your kid to fear you. Most parents do not want their children to fear them. They want them to respect them, but they don't want them to fear them because there might be a time where your child is in a situation that they really don't want to be in, but they're not going to say anything to you because they're afraid they're going to get punished. So something bad may happen to them because they were afraid of you. So when you combined reinforcement with punishment, you have the greater likelihood that it's going to work. There are different things that are reinforcers. We have primary and secondary and reinforcers, so you should know the difference. Primary reinforcers are things like food. You didn't have to learn that food's a good thing, But you did have to learn, secondary reinforcement, that money is something. I mean, think about it. A dollar bill, any type of dollar currency, 20s, 5s, 10, whatever, you had to learn the value of that because it's just a type of linen with ink on it. Same like a check. You get a check from your job, that represents money. But in reality, it's just a piece of paper with some numbers on it and a signature, right? You had to learn that. Anything that you had to learn is a secondary reinforcement. Grades in school. You learn that at CCAC, a 90 to 100 is an A. Some other schools, to get an A, you have to have a 93 to 100. See, that's a learned response. So anything that had to be learned is a secondary reinforcer. And there's a difference between an immediate and a delayed reinforcement. Now, I know none of you would ever do this, and I'm being very sarcastic there because I'm sure it happens all the time. You're invited to, say, go to a party, but you haven't studied for your psych test yet. And you decide, hey, I'm going to go to the party anyway because you want that immediate reinforcement. And you say, oh, I'm going to study the next day. But something comes up the next day. And the next thing you know, it's Monday and it's a test and you didn't study. Or would you say, well, how about this? I'm not going to go to the party tonight. I'm going to study tonight and I'm going to study tomorrow. And maybe I'll get a few of my friends after class on Monday. We'll go out. That's delayed reinforcement. Why is this important? Because think of people who have credit cards, right? You don't really have the cash right on you right then and there. You're using a piece of plastic, but eventually you get a bill with that plastic and they add interest rates on it. So you're paying more money than you would have if you would have paid cash. But it was delayed. You didn't have to pay for it until like the end of the month. So you're like, oh, I don't have to worry. I'll have it at the end of the month. Well, what if you don't have it at the end of the month? Credit card companies in the bookstores at colleges, they used to put applications for credit cards in with the books that you bought, and they would give credit cards to college students knowing that most of them didn't have jobs, that might be eating oodles of noodles and mac and cheese, because they just spent so much money on their books, and they have a credit card, and it's like, well, I'm going to take my friends out for pizza because nobody has any money. Or I'm going to buy this, and I need this and that. And then the end of the month comes, and you got that bill. And if you've ever had a credit card, if you look at how much money there, they tell you how long it would take you to pay off if you just paid the minimum amount. Sometimes it can be like 27 years, to pay it off if you just pay the minimum. You're in college, you don't have a lot of money. The credit card, it comes in handy, but to use it all the time, you want the immediate thing right then and there, isn't always the best option. So when we talk about, like a primary reinforcer, secondary reinforcer, something you didn't have to learn, secondary reinforcer you had to learn, immediate, you get instant gratification versus waiting. It's harder for the last 4 generations to delay reinforcement because we are used to having things immediate. My favorite was one night when I was leaving Allegheny campus. I went over to the Wendy's, and there was a line at the drive-thru, and we're sitting there, and it was slow, but somebody about 4 cars back from me started laying on the horn because we weren't moving real fast. And I think all of us in front of them looked out the window like, where do you think that's going to get you? Like, but we're so used to fast food is, fast. In my generation, I would have to, if I wanted a burger, I had to get to the store somehow, buy ground meat, buy buns, buy any condiments, anything I wanted, then go home, thaw out the meat, cook the meat, put the burger together, and then eat it. So you're talking an hour and a half, 2 hours, versus sitting in the drive-through for 4 minutes. And that person was upset that they were sitting for 4 minutes. It happens all the time because we're so used to getting things immediately. Notice with operant conditioning, we still have generalization, we still have discrimination, we still have extinction, we still have spontaneous recovery. The thing that's different is shaping. We can shape someone's behavior. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to train a dog to be housebroken, but this works. Let's say you got a little puppy and you want to train them so they don't go to the bathroom in the house. This is how you do it. You use shaping behavior. You start with a puppy paper that usually has a urine scent embedded in the paper. You buy them at Petco, PetSmart, any of those places. And you put it, say, somewhere in a place where you wouldn't mind if they went to the bathroom. Kitchen floor, or, dining room, somewhere it would be easy to clean. And they go to the bathroom on the paper because of the smell. And every day you move that paper a little closer to the door. So by the fourth day, it's right by the door. Then you have it part way in the door and part way out of the door. And then next you move it out the door. Then you move it closer to the lawn. And then you move it to the lawn. And then eventually you take the paper away and you just house trained your dog in less than 2 weeks. That's shaping behavior, little teeny steps at a time. The animal doesn't recognize that they're being trained, but that's what you're doing. You're shaping their behavior. You can do the same thing with children. You can do the same thing with other adults. So that's what makes this very different from classical conditioning. Classical conditioning doesn't have shaping at all. There are different types of reinforcement schedules, so we're going to talk about those. You should be familiar with the different types. So, continuous. This is pretty straightforward. You want your dog to sit, you show them a bone and say sit. So, bone, sit, bone, sit, bone, sit. So every time you say sit, you give it a reward. You reinforce them. That's continuous reinforcement. Partial reinforcement. Have you ever gotten partial credit on a test for something? You were partially reinforced for doing something. Or if you ever have to have your roof replaced on your house, hopefully not for a long time because they're expensive. But you wouldn't, a contractor comes and says, hey, it's going to be $6,000. I want my money before I do your roof. You're not going to give them $6,000 before they do anything. They may never come back. Say, I'll give you the money for the supplies. And when you finish the roof, I'll give you the rest of the money. That's partial reinforcement. Fixed interval. Interval is a time period. So a fixed period of time. If you get paid every Friday, that's a fixed interval. Every single Friday you get paid. It's fixed, doesn't change. Variable interval. Again, this is a time period. So maybe you're working on commission. So you get paid based on if you sell something. So let's say you sell a piece of jewelry on Monday, you get paid Tuesday. You sell another piece of jewelry on Tuesday, you get paid Wednesday. Wednesday, you don't sell any jewelry, so you don't get paid Thursday. And Thursday, you don't sell any jewelry, so you don't get paid Thursday. But Friday, you sell 5 pieces of jewelry. So Saturday, you get paid. That's what we mean by variable interval. It's a time period. Fixed ratio is a fixed amount. So let's say you're a farmer and you're selling apples to Giant Eagle. They don't buy your apples like per apple. They sell it as like a bushel of apples. So for every bushel, you get $10. That would be like a fixed ratio. It's an amount, not an interval, an amount. Variable ratio would be a variable amount. So sometimes, you get paid for 1 bushel. Sometimes you get the same pay for 2 bushels. It's up to you and what you negotiated with the store. You don't have to remember the graph. Here, you just have to remember the types of reinforcement. The graph is there just to help you because you might be using one of the other textbooks. I wanted to make sure everyone had a copy at least of the graph. Now, I just summarized this whole lecture so far into this slide. Both classical conditioning and operant conditioning both have that association. Okay? The organism is passive in classical conditioning. In other words, it just happens. The learning just happens. In operant conditioning, the organism knows what's going on. In classical conditioning, the response is elicited. Again, the response just happens. In operant conditioning, the response is emitted. That means you chose to do something to get your reward. Both classical and operant conditioning have avoidance learning, extinction, spontaneous recovery, generalization, and discrimination. If you understand this slide, you got 90% of this lecture. If you understand everything that's on this slide. And we're down to our last type of learning, which is that observational social learning theory. Have you ever had what we call the aha experience? Like you were doing something and you just couldn't figure it out, or you forgot somebody's name and you're like, I wonder what their name, I can't remember, and you just can't remember it. And 20 minutes later, out of nowhere, it just pops in your mind. Oh my gosh, their name is George. That's aha learning. It just kind of shows up. Albert Bandura, whose theory on social learning theory has to do with his Bobo doll study and learning from the environment. And I think I mentioned this the first night, and the Bobo dolls were these blow-up clowns that had a weighted bottom that was rounded. And if you would hit it, it would wobble back and forth. And he had a group of children in a room with all these toys. And these Bobo dolls were sitting in the corner. And most people, not only children, most adults now have no idea what a Bobo doll is. So I always have to explain that first. So kids are playing with all these toys, and some older kids walked in the room. Now, younger kids look to the older kids. They want to see what they're doing because they want to be older. And they see the older kids go over to these Bobo dolls and then proceed to pummel the Bobo dolls and then put them back, and they walk out of the room. And what did the little kids do? They ran over to the Bobo dolls, they pulled them out, and then they proceeded to pummel the Bobo dolls because they learned from watching the older kids. They learned from their environment. Social learning theory. We learn from our environment all the time. Think, have you ever been in a situation where you weren't quite sure what to do, and you just kind of look around to see what are they doing? Oh, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? We do it. We've all done it. That's social learning theory. That's what we're going to talk a lot more about when we do social psychology. This is that one slide that covers, that whole section. And that's it. That's the whole section on learning. Does anybody have any questions on learning before we do our memory activity? Okay. And I'll answer questions, of course, after class too. So you need a piece of paper and either a pencil or a pen to write with. And I'm going to attempt to improve your memory tonight. So you have to bear with me and you have to do exactly what I tell you to do. And if you do, by the end of this class, I will improve your memory. It works for 95% of the people. But you have to really do what I tell you to do. Okay? So I'll give you a second to get a piece of paper. I have no paper. What I'm going to do is give you 20 words in order that you have to try to remember without writing down. Okay? And if you forget how to do this, I do have this filmed already on YouTube, and I have the link on Blackboard. So if for some reason you don't get it, you're like one of the 5% that doesn't get it, you could do it again because it's already on Blackboard for you to look at. I don't think I have it open yet, but I will open it. But it is already filmed. So what I'm going to do is you're going to just sit there and in your own way, without writing anything down, without typing anything in the computer, honestly, because I'm not going to ask you, you don't have to share if you don't want to share how you did. I want you to try to remember these 20 words I'm going to say to you in order. So at the very end, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to write them down, and then we're going to see how many you got right. And then I'm going to show you how to improve your memory. And by the end of the class, most of you are going to get all 20 words right. Most people get 5 to 9 items right the first time we do it. In all the years I've been doing this activity, so we're talking like 26 years, I've only had 4 people get all 20 words right the first time. So don't beat yourself up if you only get 5 of them right. Most students tend to get 7 or 8 at least. Some will get like 15 or 16. It depends on your own study strategy because that can be to your benefit. But are we all ready to listen to the words? Yes?
So we're just listening and we're not writing them right now.
You're not writing anything yet. You're just listening. And as soon as I'm done, I'm going to ask you to write them down in order to see how many you memorized. Okay? So just try your best to stay focused. I know it's hard because some of you have kids and pets and everything at home, but try to stay focused and try to remember these words. Okay, we ready? 1 is tree. 2, light switch. 3, stool. 4, clover. 5, ring. 6, gun. 7, dice. 8, skate. 9, cat. 10, bowling ball. 11, goalpost. First aha moment. 12, eggs. 13, witch. 14, Valentine. 15, paycheck. 16, birthday. 17, magazine. 18, voting booth. 19, golf clubs. 20, cigarettes. Number 1 to 20, write all those words in order. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to write them down. Do the best you can. If you don't know one, skip it and go to the next one you know. And 2 minutes it is. I'll time you.
Share for everything.
Okay. Still got 1 more minute. You're going to be amazed at how many more you're going to know after I teach you the trick.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't remember. I literally got 4 written down.
That's okay. That's
Okay.
You're going to know more when I'm done. I guarantee it.
Okay. Do you want to know mads now?
Nope. We're going to
Okay.
give everyone still a couple minutes.
Okay. I'm trying to.
That's okay. Like I said, most people get 5 to 9 only, so. And people tend to remember the first ones and the last ones more than the ones in the middle.
Right.
Yeah, we call that primacy and recency.
That's the first one. That's what I did remember was the first ones.
Okay, now I want to, as we go through them, I'm gonna teach you how you're gonna put these together to remember them. So you want to write the correct word so you have the correct list. Because when we get done with this, I'm going to give you another 2 minutes, but you're going to have the list in front of you. You didn't have it before. You know, you only had 2 minutes to try to do this. And I didn't give you a lot of time to try to think in between. So all you have to do is keep track of which ones you had wrong, so you know how many you got right. But you do want to write the words. So at the end, when I finish saying the 20 words again, we're back. Okay. So 1 is tree because the number 1 kind of looks like a tree. It's association. 2 was light switch. Turn it on and off. So there's like two positions. So 2 was light switch. 3, stool. Picture a stool, a little stool that has like 3 legs that you would like sit on. 4 was clover, like a 4-leaf clover. Now 5 you might have had already encoded if you've ever heard the song 5 golden rings. 5 is ring. You have 5 fingers. Imagine a ring on the finger. 6 was gun. Imagine 6 chambers for the bullets. Imagine putting in those 6 bullets. So 6 was gun. 7 was dice. If you've ever played dice, 7's a good number to roll. And you could imagine it in your mind, like 6 and 1, on each 6 on one die and 1 on the other, or you could do 3 and 4. I mean, 2 and 6. However, or 1 and 6. Whatever way you wanted to picture it in your mind. 5 and 2. You decide how you want to picture it. So 7 was dice. 8 was a sounds like. Skate. 8 and skate sound alike. Or with the Olympics, you can think of a figure skater making the figure 8 on the ice. 9 was cat. A cat has 9 lives. 9 was cat. 10, bowling ball. If you've ever bowled, if you throw the ball down the lane, it hits 10 pins. So bowling ball. 11 was goalpost. It kind of looks like, in the end zone, kind of looks like an 11 with the 2 uprights. And for the next one, I said it was the first aha moment. Some people figure out what I'm doing when I do number 11. Or, 12. Eggs. A dozen of eggs. 13 was witch. Imagine a little kid dressed up for Halloween like a witch. Halloween is the 31st of October. Just reverse the numbers, get 13. Or something like Friday the 13th. So witch and 13. 14 would have been the second aha moment because it's coming up this Saturday. 14 was Valentine. The 14th of February is Valentine's Day. And a lot of people already have that encoded too. So if they didn't get it by eggs, sometimes by Valentine, they'll figure out what I'm doing. 15 was paycheck. A lot of people get paid the 1st and the 15th of the month, or the 15th and the end of the month. Or the other association you could use, on April 15th, we basically give our paycheck to Uncle Sam, because that's tax day. So whichever one works for you to help you remember it. 16, birthday, sweet 16. 16th birthday for an adolescent is a big thing. So 16 was birthday. 17 is magazine. It's actually the name of an actual magazine for adolescents, particularly adolescent girls. But magazine. 17 is magazine. 18 was voting booth. What do you get to do when you turn 18? You get to vote. Another milestone in a young person's life. 18 was voting booth. Okay, 19 I have to explain. It's the hardest one. 19 was golf clubs. And if you've never golfed or if you've never watched golf on TV, you might not know this. So out of the 20 words, this is definitely the hardest one. There are 18 holes in golf. Many clubs that you go play, the holes, have a little clubhouse at the end of the 18th hole where you can sit down and, put your clubs down and have a drink or have some food. And they call that the 19th hole. The only other word I was ever able to come up with 19 is one that I don't want to use, and that was COVID-19. Because nobody wants to remember COVID-19, right? And all the things that went on. But if that works better for you, then, So 19 is golf clubs. 20 is cigarettes. There are 20 cigarettes in a pack. So, does anybody need any of those 20 words repeated? So you have the whole list now, right?
Can you repeat number 6 for me, please?
Sure. 6 was gun. And you
Okay, thank you.
imagine the bullets going in the gun.
6
I
bullets in a
wanted to make
gun.
sure I wrote the right. That's what I wrote down, and originally when I first guessed it, I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly.
Sure. Okay. Is there anybody who got all 20 right the first time?
I didn't know.
How about anybody in the top, like 15 or above?
See what happens, don't you?
I had 15.
You had 15. That's awesome. How about anybody have like 12 to 15?
I had 11.
Okay, that's good. Is there
I caught on to your I had an aha moment from 8 and skate and up. I caught on to 8 and skate, then 9 lives, 10, all of that up.
Good.
Excuse me.
For the kid.
So now that we all have the list, now you know how many you got the first time. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and again, I'm going to time you for 2 minutes. You now have the list in front of you, so for all my visual learners, this will help. Auditory learners, it's a little easier for me just saying them. But now you're going to get to look at the list. You can study them however you want. At the end of the 2 minutes, I'm going to ask you to turn your paper over and do the 20 words again. And you're going to see if you picture in your mind when you're studying the number and the image of the thing that I said, that association, most of you are going to get all 20 words at the end of those 2 minutes. It really does work. If you can focus enough for those 2 minutes, and I'm going to give you a little motivation. On test number 2, here's some reinforcement. On test number 2, the extra credit on test number 2, I'm going to give you 3 of those numbers, and you're going to tell me what the peg word is. So you got some motivation to do this right now. 3 points. That's 3 free points on a test, but that will be on test 2. So let me get my clock right here. You have 2 minutes. Start studying those 20 words. Begin. 1 minute. Fifteen seconds. Okay, stop. Turn your paper over. Again, number 1 to 20. Do your best. Remember the association that goes with each number and word. If you forget one, skip it. You can always go back. Good luck. One minute remaining. Try to remember the association. Picture it in your mind. Okay. So let's go through them again. So you don't have to turn on your you know, voice out loud because all of us saying it at the same time will echo back and forth, but say them with me. Go through, you're going to check which ones you had right or wrong. So 1 is tree. 2, light switch. 3,
Stool.
stool. 4,
Clover.
clover. 5, ring.
Rings.
6,
Gun.
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 7,
I missed 7.
Dice.
What
8,
was it?
dice.
Skate. Oh,
Dice.
dice.
8 was skate.
Okay.
9 was
Cat.
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 10 was bowling
Bowling.
Bowling ball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I missed
11 was goalpost.
okay.
Okay, I missed that one too.
Me too.
12 was
Eggs.
13 was witch.
Witch.
Oh, okay.
14 was Valentine.
Valentine.
How did I forget that?
15 was
Paycheck.
Paycheck.
16 was birthday.
Oh, yeah, I forgot it. Oh, see?
17 was magazine.
Missed that.
18 was
Boat.
voting booth.
Voting booth.
Oh, I said but
19 was golf club.
Golf club.
And 20 was cigarettes.
Cigarettes.
Oh, and I
so
smoke
count-
cigarettes. I forgot that.
Okay, so count the number you had right. Now, even if you didn't get all 20,
1,
you
2,
should have
3,
approved
4,
your score.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
And
10.
put it in the
I
chat.
definitely missed like 2.
12.
Okay, just put it in the chat what your score was.
We're at
Just in the chat. So just type in the chat what your score was. Okay, so we had 19. All right. Good. Went from 4 to 20. Awesome. Another 19 there. All 20. 18. 10. 16. 18.
12. I don't know how to
Good.
pronounce it here.
Did everyone improve their score?
Yes.
Okay, so the question that was in the chat was, how can we use this? You couldn't memorize everything this way, but things that give you a hard time, that say you've studied it over and over and over, they're called peg words. And they say college students should have 50 of these. Well, I just gave you 20. 20 works. You don't really need 50. But you can attach any bit of information to this pairing, because once you get that pair up into your long-term memory, it becomes a retrieval cue. Have you ever taken a test and you know it, you just can't get it? It's like, I know I studied it, I can remember. And then, of course, after the test, as soon as you leave the test, it's like, oh, that's what it was. You pair it with one of these peg words. So let's say you were taking a math test and you had to know Pythagorean theorem and you keep forgetting it. So you think 1 tree and you imagine a squared plus b squared equals c squared on the trunk of the tree. And you spend 30 seconds encoding that. When it's time for that math test, it's like, oh, what's that stupid formula? And then you're like, wait, I paired it with 1 and tree. That comes right back when it comes to out of your memory. It comes back with the formula on the tree. So you couldn't memorize everything that way. But for things that give you a hard time, peg words are awesome. And it was nice to see a lot of you did get, an improvement. You only had 2 minutes. Imagine if you use what we call distributive practice. If just 3 times in the next week, 3 times for 5 minutes. So let's say Wednesday, you spend 5 minutes studying those words. Friday, you spend 5 minutes studying that word. Sunday, you spend 5 minutes studying those words. Those words will be yours for life. I have students that I taught 20 years ago, and I'll see them and I'll say 15, and they'll go paycheck. Because once they're in there, they stay. And it just gives you a retrieval cue to pull up. Like I said, you couldn't study everything that way by attaching, but especially with things that you keep forgetting, or you only know part of something. You can attach phrases, you can attach numbers, you can attach words, definitions, but once those 20 words are encoded, they're your retrieval cue. That will help you remember that information. And we'll talk more about memory next week, but I wanted to give you those peg words this week because if I would have told you those peg words next week before the test, if any of you didn't distribute your studying over the week and tried to like cram, the peg words would have kicked it out. So I didn't want to disrupt anyone's study method. Distributed practice is the best way to study. So yes, there is a lot of material. I mean, it's an overview course. So yes, there is. Your study guide is your PowerPoint. If we talked about it in class, if it made the PowerPoint, it has fair game to be on the test. There's nothing on the test that I didn't in some way either refer to, talk to, or has something on the slide that's going to be on the test. There'll be, maybe a scenario and you'll have to, oh yeah, that's, reinforcement. And one of the answer choices is reinforcement. So if you know what's on the slides, if you paid attention in class, you should do well on the test. And then you do have that chance at extra credit if you don't do well. So don't stress yourself up. Some people get test anxiety, and you may have studied every single day, but you still do bad on the test because you get anxious and you get worried that you're not going to do well, and then you don't do well. So relax. Know that you can do those TED Talks for 15 percentage points. So you can, kind of rest assured, even if it's not 100%, you still have a chance to get 15 percentage points back, which can make the difference in a grade. So like I said, if you have a 70, which is a low C, and you do the TED Talks, that brings you up to an 85. You just went from a C to a B. So, don't stress out. But distributed practice studying works best. Study a little either each night or every other night, but don't wait till the night before. Cramming doesn't work. The research shows that cramming does not work because it doesn't get encoded. So I've been teaching since 1982. I'm telling you, distributed practice is the best way to study, especially for a course like this that has lots of material. So maybe Wednesday night, spend 45 minutes or an hour studying the stuff from lecture 1. And then Friday, study lecture 2. And
Where do
then
I find lecture 1 at?
they're all on Blackboard.
Okay.
Yeah, everything's on Blackboard.
Okay.
So all the PowerPoints, and like I said, most of these are filmed on YouTube already. So if you want to watch them again, you could.
Okay.
But like I said, even the peg words are filmed on YouTube. You just type in Shablowski but I have many of the links already on Blackboard, so you could go back and watch them. But that's it. If you read the material in your book, that goes with the stuff we talked about in class. And and I kind of gave some hints as we went along. If you remember in the first lecture, I said you're going to have to know the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Well, that's a question on the test. Or I talked about the different intervals tonight. I may give you a scenario and you're going to have to tell me if that's a fixed interval or if it's a fixed ratio or if it's a variable interval. I compared the classical conditioning and operant conditioning. So, but that's not on this test, but I'm just trying to make that point. Does every question's going to have some tie-in. There's nothing that's just going to be out of the book. Nothing. Not one question. So if you paid attention to the lectures, if you read over the PowerPoints, if you study the PowerPoints, you should get a good score. And if you don't, because it is the first test, you do the extra credit, you get the extra 15 percentage points, and then you'll know for the next test how to study, because then you've all had one of my tests. So the hardest test is always the first test, because you've never had me as a teacher before. Once you have one of my first tests, it's easier. And usually by the end of the course, people are all getting A's on the test because you now know how I test. The first test is the hardest. Okay, well, if anybody has any questions, feel free to stick around. If not, you're done for the evening. You know, if you have a question, feel free to text me. Just remember to say Monday. So I know which class, say you're not my Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday class. But have an awesome week and good luck, and we'll lecture first, about 45 minutes next week. I'll give you a break, and then you'll have from like 7 o'clock to 8:30 to take the test, and it's only 32 or 33 questions. So most people are done in a half hour, but you have an hour and a half if you need it. So take care.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Have a good night.
Good night. When is the test? Monday, next Monday, second half of class.
So at like 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, I'll lecture for about 45 minutes. I'll give you a little break, and then I'm going to post the test I'll open the test on Blackboard, and then you just download the test. Either highlight the answers or you can write down the answers like on a piece of paper and take a picture of it, so you would write like 1A, 2B, with your name on the paper, of course. Take a picture and send me the picture of your answer sheet. Or you can just type it right into the body of like an email, 1A, 2B, so whichever way is easier for you. I let people choose. It's harder for me grading, but it's easier for people on Zoom to pick the way that they feel more comfortable taking the test. And you have to be on camera. Yeah, you can't do it without being on camera. So if your camera doesn't work on your computer, you have to find a computer or use your phone as your camera and do the test on your computer, but have your phone showing me that you're taking the test.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Gianna, question? No? Okay, well, I hope you have an awesome night. Let me stop the recording.